Hey guys, welcome to another huge episode of Triggered. I hope everyone's doing well. This is a special Friday edition of the show. I've been crazy this week, traveled, had to go in and out all over the world. So doing my best to hop on when I can. So thanks for tuning in. Sorry I couldn't keep the normal sort of Monday, Thursday schedule. It's just been a little bit wild, so we'll try Friday and let's see what happens. But as busy as I am, it doesn't seem to even compare to how busy the rest of the world must be trying to keep up with your favorite president, because we're seeing the same thing everywhere right now. Whether it's on jobs, on foreign policy, on the border, we're seeing a striking shift. Because for years, Washington treated normal Americans like they were the problem, right? That's what they told you all the time. I mean, they worked for themselves and they worked for their special interests. You were just nuisances that you wanted, something out of your taxpayer dollars and that kind of stuff. But now we're looking at government and saying, how do we make this work for the people who actually make this country great, for the people who pay for all of this stuff with their taxpayer dollars to make it all happen? And at the exact same time, Democrats, doing what they always do, are doing the opposite. Breaking agencies, weaponizing race, trying to shut down border security, and then acting shocked, just totally in disbelief, when Americans notice the damage that the Democrats have done to this country forever. So we're going to get into all of the latest. Guys, make sure you're liking, sharing, and subscribing so you never miss one of these major episodes, okay? Hit the like button. You guys help the algorithm. You guys help get it out there. Share it with your friends afterwards. And again, subscribe so you see it, okay? So you don't miss one of these shows. If you do miss the show here on Rumble, go over to Apple, Spotify podcasts, catch it there. If your friends get their podcast that way, make sure they know about it and do the same, okay? Again, you guys are the front line of defense on this stuff. You guys got to get it out there. You guys make it happen. I try to put in the work so we can get it out there. You guys need help. For all of the top headlines that we cover on the show, go over, check out my news app, MXM News, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. And of course, don't forget about our brave sponsors for having the guts to support this program, okay? We say it all the time, but it's always true. It's not easy to support a show like this, to go against the grain, to take on the nonsense and the left. Support those who share your values. And guys, we have another familiar face sponsoring the show now, Goldco. Gold just surged past $5,000 an ounce. Silver blew past 100. And the U.S. just added silver to the critical mineral list, meaning it's now considered crucial for American security and economic survival. This isn't speculation. This is real. That's why I've renewed my partnership with the #1 rated gold company, Goldco. A+ rated by the BBB, the Better Business Bureau, and they've helped Americans place over $3 billion in gold and silver. So visit donjrgold.com, DONJR gold.com, to get a free 2026 gold and silver kit. And because you're part of this audience, you get up to 10% back in bonus silver or gold just for getting started. Again, that's donjrgold.com. Do it now. Educate yourself. What do you have to lose? Sponsors like All Family Pharmacy. After everything we saw during COVID and the cover-up, saying we have trust issues with the so-called experts is probably an understatement, guys. They used pressure, lies, red tape to block access to medications that were once easy to get. That can't happen again. And with All Family Pharmacy, it won't. All Family Pharmacy is redefining healthcare. No waiting rooms, no delays, no insurance games. Just direct access to over 200 trusted medications, including ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, emergency kits, and so much more. You can customize your order, have it shipped straight to your door. So go to allfamilypharmacy.com/DONJR, Don Jr., allfamilypharmacy.com/Don Jr., and use promo code DonJr20, DONJR20, for 20% off of your first order. Again, that's allfamilypharmacy.com/Don Jr., or use promo code DonJr20 for 20% off at checkout. Let's get into it. And I want to start with a concept that I know will sound shocking. Actually, using our government to negotiate for Americans instead of negotiating against them. I know. Out of control, guys. Who would have thought to do something like that? A government that asks who benefits, who pays, who gets saved, and ultimately who gets exposed. Because for decades, the deal was always good for somebody that was working against America's interests. It was great for China. It was incredible for the NGOs. It was awesome for the donor class. And it was really good for the consultants. But for the worker? For the common sense person? For the family trying to keep a job and book a flight and pay bills and not ultimately get crushed by the latest genius idea from Washington that, again, only served the people mentioned above, not the average American? Not so much, man. It wasn't working for them. And that's what's changing. Because yesterday, your favorite president announced something that actually matters for Americans trying to build wealth. Low-cost IRA accounts for every American. Check this out.
Beginning at the start of next year, every American will be able to go to TrumpIRA.gov and open a new low-cost IRA account. You'll then be able to access the same type of retirement accounts that federal employees enjoy through the thrift savings plans, which are incredible. As part of the Federal Savers Match Program, low-income Americans will be eligible to receive up to $1,000 per year in matching funds deposited directly into their accounts. It's a great thing. For millions of Americans who lack employer-sponsored plans, this will be really revolutionary because they'll be covered. Nobody thought that was possible. For example, if a 25-year-old who is eligible for a Savers Match Program invests just $165 a month under the matching federal contributions, they will have an estimated $465,000 in their account by the time they're 65 years old. In other words, they'll be rich. And there's something awfully nice about that. But this is only the first step. I was talking to Kevin Hassett a little while ago, and the people standing right behind me, we're going to take it to the next level. And the next level, Kevin, you're going to mention something, but the next level will be necessary to have congressional approval. What you just heard, we don't need congressional approval. And it'll never be terminated, because to terminate it, if somebody else is in office, to terminate it, you'd have to take that money away. You'd have to really take away something that's so positive. I don't think any politician would do it.
Every American being able to open a low-cost IRA account, getting access to the same kind of retirement tools that federal employees enjoy, creating a clear roadmap to plan for the future. That's a big deal, okay? That matters. Let the worker build wealth. Let the young family actually invest. Let them have those same opportunities. That's not complicated, guys. That's not some 900-page, socialist plan. That's just letting Americans keep more control over their own future. We've seen the same sort of thing, with Trump RX, with the Trump accounts for kids, creating real platforms and vehicles to save and create wealth. And then invest that money to ultimately let it grow even further. And that's why the left is finding any which way they can to hate it. Because the left doesn't want independent Americans. They want dependent Americans. Dependent on the program, dependent on the subsidy, dependent on the activist group, dependent on the politicians who broke everything in the first place. They want dependence because without dependence, there's no reason to vote for Democrats. Not voting for the handouts and the nonsense program, because if you're independent, you realize they're inefficient, wasteful, as we've seen in most cases, fraudulent. My father is saying the opposite of what the Democrats want. He wants you to build your own future. Build your future. Stop letting Washington skim off the top while telling you it's for your own good. That's the economic contrast right there. And by the way, this isn't just happening at home. Look at Venezuela. The first flight from the United States in years landed there yesterday from Miami. Something that seemed pretty unimaginable, let's just say in, December of 2025. Here's the scene yesterday in Miami and Caracas.
Moments after touching down in Caracas, the captain of this American Airlines flight leaned out the cockpit to wave the Venezuelan flag, signaling the first direct arrival from the U.S. in 7 years. Passengers stopping for selfies on the stairs, descending to a crowd waiting on the tarmac. The journey began just after 10 a.m. in Miami, where emotional passengers lined up at the gate.
The last time I was here in Venezuela was 18 years ago, and I'm very excited to go and see the family.
The flight crew opening the windows to wave the U.S. and Venezuelan flags, then taxiing through a water cannon salute before takeoff. This flight, the most visible sign yet of a rapid diplomatic thaw following the ouster of Venezuela's authoritarian leader, Nicolas Maduro, in January. Despite the uncertainty, for those landing in Caracas today, 7 years of grounded hopes finally coming to a historic end.
I'm taking my family back, my kids back, my grandkids back. So it's a historic day.
That's a human story. It's also a geopolitical story because for years, the so-called experts told us that the Western Hemisphere was just something to manage, a problem to study, a crisis to tweet about. But now we look at the hemisphere and say, no, this is our neighborhood. Use your leverage. Use your force. You make deals. You open doors when it helps Americans and their families. You shut doors when criminals, cartels, and hostile regimes try to exploit us. Pretty simple. That's how serious countries act. And just listen to the people in that clip. They're not talking like think tank fellows. They're talking like normal people who haven't been able to do something basic for years. And the same media that spent 4 years pretending Joe Biden mumbling, through a cue card was somehow diplomacy will barely know what to do with it because it doesn't fit their narrative. Trump is supposed to be chaos, remember? Except the chaos was actually the old system. Open borders, broken deals, dead leverage. Americans stranded in bureaucratic nonsense while the elites congratulated themselves for being so sophisticated. This is actually order. It's not perfect. It's not easy, but order. And it's just the beginning. And that brings me to DHS. Because while Trump is trying to make the government work again, Democrats keep proving they don't care if it works at all. Secretary Mullen laid out what the Democrat shutdown did to critical agencies, and it's even worse than you'd expect. Check out Mark Wayne Mullen just the other day talking about it.
What we have now is an opportunity to actually move forward. What was taking place was tearing Homeland altogether, from the Coast Guard all the way down to ICE and everybody in between. Just TSA, we lost almost 8% of the workforce, which is almost double what our attrition rate typically is.
Yeah, so how do you replace those people?
Well,
Can
it
you
takes
get them
4 months. Well, not really. It takes about 4 months to onboard people. Just CISA, who's over, CISA, by the way, takes care of our cybersecurity. We're down 1,100 people.
Down?
Down. So almost a third of the workforce is no longer with us. 76 days being shut down, not being able to be operational. People say, well, but they're getting paid. We had State Department paying our electricity bill. We had DOW, Secretary Hegseth was paying our gas bill for the United States Coast Guard to operate. We may be able to pay paychecks, but we couldn't do anything. We had contractors walking off the border wall. We have drone defense companies that we're subcontracting from that was walking off jobs because we have MOUs, memorandum of understanding, with law enforcement that's got to deliver these 11 cities that we got FIFA coming to with the World Cup that haven't been paid since February. It was absolutely absurd, and AOC wants to sit there and say it was worth it. We are tasked to protect the homeland. I don't care where AOC lives or how she votes. My job is still to protect her constituents. And she thinks it's worth it to put their lives at danger because no other agency protects the homeland. DHS protects the homeland, and she thinks it's worth it. It's sad.
So
just sit with that for a second, guys. CISA down 1,100 people, almost a third of the workforce. Contractors being pressured to walk off the border wall. Critical security functions damaged because Democrats wanted a political stunt. And then Hakeem Jeffries wants to sit there and act like it was all worth it. Worth it to whom exactly? Worth it to the border agents trying to do their jobs? I don't think so. Worth it to the contractors trying to secure the wall and stop fentanyl from pouring across our border and, human trafficking and all those pesky little things that Democrats seem to be in favor of, not even against? Worth it to the Americans whose cyber infrastructure is supposed to be protected? No. It's worth it to the left-wing activist class. It was worth it to the cable news resistance crowd. Their ratings and their clickbaits, talking about nonsense and lying, pretending it's for the good of people, preserving democracy and, the usual nonsense that they talk about that never actually ends up being about preserving anything that's real and certainly not democracy. It was worth it to the people who think government is just a stage for their little revolutionary theater. But that's their pattern. Break the agency, blame Trump, fund the NGO, import the crisis, and then lecture to you and complain about it. Rinse and repeat, over and over and over again. That's the Democrat model. And while we're on the subject of Democrats using the system for power, the Supreme Court handed down a major Voting Rights Act decision this week, blocking Louisiana's map and basically pouring cold water on the Democrats' map-rigging system by effectively striking down majority-minority House districts, finding them to be unconstitutional racial gerrymanders. Basically, for decades, this is what happened. Democrats gerrymandered congressional district based on race. I mean, think about that. We're all equal unless we can figure out how to squeeze a couple more Democrat seats in Congress out of this thing. Okay? They did this to try to manufacture more Democrat seats in the House. It's been a key part of the Democrat machine, and they've done it very effectively for a long time, and it's why they have such disproportionate representation in Congress. But now it appears that common sense is finally winning again. Check this out.
Good morning. Okay, so this at first blush here is a win for the plaintiffs who were not black plaintiffs. They were non-minority voters who challenged this decision. These two districts that were minority majority. Essentially, Louisiana had drawn up districts and then they were told in a legal battle that they had not represented black and minority voters sufficiently. They went back and drew a second district. So they had two of these minority majority districts. Well, then non-black voters sued and said, this is now violating our rights on the basis of race. So it looks like this is a 6-3 decision. There is one concurrence here, but it looks like the dissent sticks together with Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson. But here's what the majority says. They say in some, because the Voting Rights Act did not require Louisiana to create an additional majority-minority district, no compelling interest justified the state's use of race in creating SB 8. That was those two new districts. That map is an unconstitutional gerrymander, and its use would violate the plaintiff's constitutional rights. Now, this opinion is almost 100 pages long, so we're going through to see if it says something more broadly about the Voting Rights Act. That had been the fear on the left, that somehow this decision, if it was favorable for those challenging these maps, that it would somehow do a big chunk out of the Voting Rights Act. Haven't gotten to language that suggests that yet. It sounds like this decision is primarily about what happened in Louisiana. So we'll keep digging through this. But for right now, it's a win for those who were challenging these two minority-majority districts. Now, as we read through this and figure out the broader implications, there were 20-plus districts across the country that would have potentially lined up with this decision. They could be open to challenges that they were drawn on the basis of race, or that it was the primary factor that was used in drawing those districts. Most of those are throughout the South. So we'll look to see if there's enough sweeping language in this particular decision that may have a domino effect on some 20 other districts. Could be huge for the midterms. We'll continue to read through.
Now, we're going to watch how the legal fallout develops here, because the left is already melting down. And every state is going to read the decision carefully. And it may mean rewriting maps so they actually make sense. Right now, one of these maps where it's like, here's a district that's conservative. Let's combine it with something in this other part of the state. We'll have a little thin 100-yard line for 50 miles here to connect it there so that we can keep a Democrat seat representing basically a conservative area. Okay, but they're going to try to do it. They're going to try to make sure they don't look like a bunch of zigzagging puzzle pieces across a state. For example, just look at places like Illinois and others. Okay, insane maps. But the principle is pretty simple. You can't spend decades trying to invoke the civil rights movement, but then build your entire political machine around sorting voters by race. And by the way, some of the biggest proponents of this racial gerrymandering, you guessed it, folks, was the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, who was also recently, we learned, was funding the KKK. Funny how that works. You can't say the Constitution is sacred when it helps you and then treat it like it's an obstacle when it stops your map makers. You can't call everything democracy when what you really mean is Democrats getting a guaranteed seat. That's the hustle. That's the grift. And it's been going on for far too long. They dress it up in civil rights language, but the goal is ultimately power. That's it. And by the way, Democrats are running some nut for Senate in Maine who literally had a Nazi tattoo on his chest, right? They don't talk about that because, it's just inconvenient for them at the time. But, if they can win and keep power, none of it matters. It's all theatrics. Aren't Democrats supposed to be outraged about this one? Isn't this their obsession? If it was a conservative, what would they be doing every day? All day long. 24/7, 365. Well, Senator Chris Van Hollen, the same guy, by the way, who had the margarita with the MS-13 illegal alien gang member, great people. Well, anyway, he was asked about Graham Planter's Nazi tattoo and said, and I quote, "He just went through a really rough period." I mean, he didn't get rid of that tattoo. He still has the tattoo, right? I guess it's like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a really rough period. It just seems like maybe he's a really bad guy. But, you could forget all that when, again, it's about power.
The dude has not had a Nazi tattoo. I mean, let's be clear about what's going on here. I mean, how do you view that? I mean, it seems to be at least somewhat disqualifying in traditional.
Certainly historical.
So look, I mean, let's take a couple issues, including the comments he's made in the past. I mean, he's been very clear that he went into combat on behalf of the United States. He went through a really rough period, PTSD type period. And he has himself said there are lots of things he's done and said that he completely regrets. And I do believe people should have second chances and that people can learn from their mistakes. And I think he's been doing that.
Democrats call you a Nazi if you want border security or if you want merit-based hiring. When one of their own has a literal Nazi tattoo, not a big deal. It was just a phase. It's part of growing up, I guess. And if you're looking at the Democrats today in Congress, it probably is just a phase. Or we'll pretend it's a phase till we have power and then it doesn't really matter. You can't make it up anymore. Democrats use race as a map-making tool, race as a funding tool, race as a hiring tool, race as a censorship tool, and race as a division tool. And the second anyone says, I don't know, maybe America should stop organizing everything by skin color, just leave skin color out, the left screams like you committed a hate crime. But at the same time, the SPLC was funding the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, okay? Making sure that they really existed, making sure that they could come up and create an enemy. So they created the enemy that they were fighting against, which sounds pretty much exactly like everything else in Democrat Party politics. And one of their star Senate candidates apparently used to very much embrace the Nazi worldview. How exactly are Democrats going to turn that circle into a square? I don't know how they do it, but you can't make it make sense. No one's asking about it in the mainstream media. Again, it's why we ask you to share these things so people actually understand what's going on because, no one over at CNN is going to talk about the insanity of this or MSDNC or, whatever they call it now and yada, yada, yada. And as I've said, one side is trying to rebuild the country around citizens. The other side is still stuck in the same old racket. Divide people, sort people, scare people, depend on those in power. Dependence is everything. That's their whole game. If you're dependent, you're probably a Democrat voter. It's why they wanted to import people who can't read and can't take care of themselves and are going to burn through a system because as long as everyone's dependent on big government, the Democrats probably will play a major role. And we're seeing every day citizens finally standing up to it from coast to coast. Spencer Pratt is running for mayor of Los Angeles, and his latest ad may be one of the best we've ever seen.
This is where Mayor Bass lives. You notice something? Or here, where Nithya Raman's $3 million mansion sits. They don't have to live in the mess they've created where you live. This is where I live. They let my home burn down. I know what the consequences of failed leadership are. That's why I'm running for mayor. For my sons and the rest of us Angelinos that want to stop these corrupt politicians from destroying our city. We are going to get the golden age of Los Angeles back.
They really are not like us. Left-wing leaders don't have to live under the disasters they create. You do, okay? It's why a guy like Spencer Pratt can actually be doing pretty well in LA, a very, 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 very left-leaning city, because people are finally starting to understand. Democrats don't answer to the same consequences. And then ultimately, it's why this moment really matters, because we're not just trying to change politics. We're changing the standard. We're changing the playbook. We're changing the norms, because the norms, the playbook, and the standards have failed us miserably. And unless we change them drastically, nothing is ever really going to change. The question is not whether something makes Washington feel important. The question is whether it actually helps Americans. Does it save jobs? Does it build wealth? Does it secure the country? Does it bring families together? Does it make the United States stronger? If yes, then do it. If no, stop funding it. Stop defending it. And stop letting the people who broke everything pretend they're the experts. On one side, you have a president using leverage again. Jobs, retirement, travel, border diplomacy, all pointed back at the American citizen. On the other side, you have Democrats breaking DHS, radicalizing elections, and treating government like a machine for activists instead of a tool for and of the people. One side builds, the other side breaks. One side negotiates, the other side lectures. One side asks if it's a good deal for Americans. The other side asks if it helps keep them in power and keeps the money flowing to their peers and their activist groups. And after everything this country has been through, that's not a small difference, guys. That's the whole ball game. So, guys, thanks so much for tuning in on this special Friday edition of the show. Make sure we keep getting the message out. Make sure you're subscribing so you never miss an episode. Check out our sponsors down below in the video description, okay? That's really important. These guys work hard. They're taking risks by supporting the show. Support those who share your values. But take a second here. Hit the little like button and then share this with like 10 of your friends, okay? Make sure they get it out. Check us out on Spotify, on iTunes podcasts, so we can get the message out that way, okay? That's the number one thing, okay? This information is out there. But if you're not active, if you're not partaking in it, if you're not sharing, most people will never, ever see it. So, as always, guys, stay strong, stay informed, stay engaged, and always stay a little bit triggered. I hope you guys have an incredible weekend. Again, like, share, subscribe, get it going, get it out there. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you all again very soon.